Hello, Deanna here, and thanks so much for being here. So today's video is going to be a book review, and the book I will be reviewing is Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. This one I actually read a few years ago. I read this back in about 2019, and I have a post on my blog, and I will go ahead and leave that link below in the description. But I thought this one was one of Jodi's best books that I've read, and so I wanted to share my thoughts on it today. I'm going to go ahead and read the summary that I wrote for my blog for this book. Ruth Jefferson has been a labor and delivery nurse for many years, and never has she encountered a situation where she was pulled from a case based on the color of her skin. When the baby falls into distress, though, and Ruth is the only nurse around, she needs to decide between listening to others or saving a baby's life. This one decision throws her life into a tailspin and results in her facing some very serious charges. So I wrote that summary back when I was pretty new to my blog, so my summaries have evolved a bit, and I tend to give a bit more information. And with this one, definitely the heart of matter of this book and what runs right through this book is the theme of racism. We are seeing, like many of Jodi's books, there is a social commentary on our society woven throughout this book. And we see different points of view in this book. We primarily follow Ruth, who is the labor and delivery nurse who is also Black. And then we also follow the perspective of Kennedy, which is her legal representative, court-appointed representative for herself, as well as we see the point of view of Turk, who is the embodiment of a white supremacist, is essentially what Turk is. And we are seeing these three different points of view throughout this book. Anyone who might know Jodi knows that she is a white woman as well. So of course there may be some hesitations reading this book because it is from a white woman's perspective on race, and she is trying to step into the shoes of Ruth, a Black woman. But like many of Jodi's works, my opinion is that she did this in a really great way. She does a lot of research, and she really tries to be authentic to the people that she is writing about. Now, take that what you will. As coming from a white woman myself, I definitely understand that this might come across in a way that is not authentic to Black people and how Black people might feel. And I completely appreciate that, and I can understand, because reading this book, I got a little uncomfortable. And you know what? I should have, because this should be something that we are uncomfortable with until something is done, until changes are made, and until those that have had their voices stifled or have had this oppression happen to them, till we get past that, until we're at a place where we're not walking around with our prejudices and our microtransgressions happening, then we need to be uncomfortable, because with uncomfortableness comes change. So I am glad that Jodi sparked that in me, and I was able to reflect and think of some of those things, and I'm still learning, and I still always need to do better. I strive to try to do better, because we all deserve to do better. Though Turk is very easily identified in this book as the stereotypical racist, the horrible, loudmouth, swastika-bearing racist that is like American History X kind of racist that has been portrayed, because he is that typical embodiment of racism, we can point at Turk and say that it is all his fault. Because in this book, he really does spark some of what happens by being the one to be so overtly racist that he points a finger at Ruth and says, I do not want her touching my son, the little baby, in the labor and delivery unit. And so she's pulled off his case. So yes, he was very much the spark that started that, but it was also a system of systemic racism and people just being too okay with what happens in that regard, that instead of standing behind Ruth and giving her a voice and letting her do her job, she was pulled from this case, and that systemic racism essentially won in this case. And then of course Ruth is grappling through the whole book on the choice that she made and whether she made a right choice in trying to uphold her oath as a nurse and as a human trying to save a baby's life, or whether she should have listened to I'm getting upset, but whether she should have listened to the system that forced her to not participate and to be shunned and be treated as less than. This book definitely sparked some emotions in me, and I cried for the baby and the loss of life from the poor baby, but I cried so much for Ruth and her son and her fears and the injustice that she came across. And I was really glad for the character of Kennedy, because I did relate to Kennedy a lot in thinking that sometimes we're doing good by trying to say, oh, we're anti-racist because we're not that hateful. We don't hate Black people. And that's not enough. As anyone can see over the past couple of years in what has happened, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, so many, that I just think it's important though that it's not just the Blacks fighting for this, because the Blacks have been fighting for far too long. We need some white people shining a light on this as well, and we need the ones to realize that we have to make those changes too, and we can't just sit there and be complacent thinking, well, I'm not the bad guy because I don't think those things. I don't think that, Blacks are dirty or that they're wrong or they're criminals, or it's much more than that, and it's much deeper than that, and that's what this book explores too, and that we all have our preconceived prejudice about anyone else. We do tend to judge sometimes on very minimal information. The important thing is not just sitting with that discrimination and prejudice and just letting it be part of our vocabulary in a way that it's, oh, well, I'm not to that extreme, so I'm okay. Well, no, because then you become the other extreme, which is just painting them all as, I don't see color, so I'm okay because I don't see color. No, we see color. Color is important because their culture is important. Everybody's uniqueness is important. Where people come from and what they have gone through and their struggles and what makes them is important. And we don't need to whitewash that and say, oh, I just see everyone the same. We have to be uncomfortable, like I said, to learn more and to understand better. And Jodi really did that very well in this book. As much as I'm not trying to rant about racism, it's hard not to when that is very much what this book is about, and that's what is supposed to spark these conversations and making sure that we are talking about things so that we are seeing change happen. So I'm a huge fan of Jodi, so I might be very biased as well in my opinion on this, but my opinion is that this book was very well written. She wrote it in essentially stages. For example, we have stage 1, the transition stage, and I thought that was a really unique way to break up this book and tie it into Ruth's career as well as a labor and delivery nurse and the different stages that mothers go through, preterm and term labor and in labor and all of that lovely stuff, and the stages that they go through as they're going through a labor and delivery. And with the different sides that we see, the 3 different perspectives, I was encaptured by each of them. As much as I hated the character of Turk and hated what he stood for and his hates as well, I also in some ways felt sorry for him and just was saddened by the loss that he and his wife experienced, losing their newborn baby, because that's a horrible thing to have to go through. I did appreciate seeing that point of view as well, just to step into that and just to add to the story and add to this dynamic of this story. I was also really fascinated by the ending of this book and the bit of the twist. I'm not gonna give away any spoilers on what happened in regards especially to the trial, because in this book, Ruth, I still don't even think I've summarized it well enough to really say that Ruth is pulled from this case of this little baby. The Turk does not want Ruth touching his son and asks for her to be removed from the baby's care so that she is nowhere near the baby. But unfortunately, the baby goes into some type of distress in that he needs intervention and there's no one else around, and Ruth is the only one to provide any type of care. And then before we know it, everyone's burst in, doctors, other nurses, and Turk sees Ruth touching his baby, and then he then sparks all of this by saying that Ruth purposely killed his baby. That's a heavy thing. That's a big heavy thing to really go through. And then Ruth is arrested and charged with the murder of this baby, whether it's negligence or actual attempts. That's what, is part of this murder trial. And she has to get a public defender, which is Kennedy. And Kennedy comes in as that white woman who has no idea, who thinks she's not racist at all, but through her interactions with Ruth, she really has to learn herself what racism means and how she even has some racist undertones that she didn't realize and needs to be called out. So this book really explores that, and it then goes through the trial of Ruth, and we're going through the trial with Kennedy and just seeing all of the different hearings and them up on the stand and everything like that. It goes through all of that in this book. And so while I won't spoil and give away the ending and say how the trial came out, I do just want to say that one of the twists that were in this book kind of saw coming, but I also was kind of appreciative of as well. I also love in this book that Jodi doesn't just focus on the present and the now and the what's happening now that this has all happened, but she delves back a bit into the past and she looks at how these people kind of came to where they are, especially Turk, and then especially Ruth, because we see the struggles that Ruth came against and what Ruth has really gone through to come to where she is now. And we see how much she has pushed and worked and strived to be accepted, and yet still is stigmatized and is just pointed at. This book, I wouldn't be surprised if it got your emotions boiling a bit if you read it, because there were times when it got mine and it made you really think, and I think that's important. I think it's important, as I said, to get uncomfortable, to read this, and to think about those privileges that you have and that some of us experience and where we are in life. Once I started reading this book, I couldn't put it down. I was definitely hooked. I could not stop. It broke me very much in a lot of ways. It made me cry. It made me think. It made me reflect. This is just evoked so many emotions within me. And I think that is very powerful when a book can do that. And Jodi did a fantastic job at doing this in this book. This book so much too showed how small, great things can have some really big impacts. They might be small little measures that we take, but they can have huge impacts and have huge outcomes that happen. And I think that was very much showed in this book. This book was a reminder to me as well that love and kindness is so crucial in our world when it has been filled, especially lately in the last couple of years, with so much division and anger and sadness and anxiety and so much hatred that has happened, especially, behind the anonymous keyboards that can very much happen. And so to try to be kinder and understand others and where they come from, and realize that people have their own struggles and people all come from different walks of life, and we all need to appreciate that more and understand that more. I think that was very important in this book. And I think we all need a little more patience and understanding in our lives, and that we all need to realize we all do great small things every day. So the writing style of this book was very similar to any of other Jodi's books. They said we had our multiple points of view, which was very reminiscent to other of Jodi's works. It had that social commentary woven throughout. It's the same kind of writing style where it's a bit heavier of a topic, so it's going to evoke some emotions, it's going to evoke some thoughts, it's going to evoke you having to think a little bit sometimes, but it's also sometimes really easy to read because it's so engaging and such a good story. And these characters, you felt for each of those characters in their very different ways, and they felt like real believable characters. Sometimes perhaps there was a little too much stereotypical of what was happening and some of the outcomes, but again, I think that's almost fitting for this book when it's all about stereotypes and racism and what our preconceived notions are on people. So that was woven throughout this book very much. It was just one of my favorite Jodi Picoult books. I very much enjoyed this book, and it is one of my favorites of hers, and I did rate it 5 out of 5, and it still continues to be a 5-star book for me. It's one of my favorites, and I absolutely love it. I love the character of Ruth. I love how strong she was, and just how much she just, I just felt for her. She was a wonderful character, and I love her character very much. So I think that's going to be it for me, but if you love Jodi, check out this book if you haven't read it. I really strongly encourage you to give it a read, and let me know if you have read it. Let me know below. And if you haven't read it and you're going to read it and have some thoughts about it, come back and comment here. I'd love to have a discussion about it as well. So thanks so much. I really appreciate it. So that's going to be it for me for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, give it a like, all that fun stuff. Check out my blog if you're interested. Always happy to have people go and read my blog posts. So thank you so much for your time. I'm always appreciative. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. Take care of yourself. Thank you again for watching, and you will see me next time. Bye!